Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. Well, after 10 weeks, the Nathaniel Veltman trial is coming to an end, with the defense making its closing remarks today. Plus, the federal labor minister is in Windsor to discuss recent legislation to ban replacement workers. And people across Windsor are celebrating Diwali, and we caught up with some of the celebrations this weekend. The jury has started hearing closing arguments today in the Nathaniel Veltman trial. He was accused of killing 4 members of a Muslim family in London in 2021. The 22-year-old has pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder, as well as terror-related charges. But as the CBC's Thomas Dagler reports, his lawyers say the attack warrants lesser charges.
For members of the Muslim community who came to court Tuesday, it's been a long 2.5-year wait for this moment, the final chapter in the murder-terror trial of the man who ran over the Afzal family with his truck in London, Ontario.
Hearing gruesome details has been very difficult. Seeing the family, hearing these things firsthand has also been very difficult, and we've been trying to support them as much as we can.
In closing arguments to the jury, the defense presented 22-year-old Nathaniel Veltman as a troubled young man. His lawyers insisting that confession to police he made hours after the attack should not be taken as an admission of guilt.
It was terrorism. I'm not gonna try to get a lighter sentence by saying it was just murder, not terrorism.
The defense says at that time, Veltman was still in a drug-fueled haze and dealing with several mental disorders. Nate Veltman had no time to deliberate the killings of the Afzal family, lawyer Christopher Hicks told the jury, suggesting they consider lesser charges of manslaughter or second-degree murder.
The penalties are a little bit different in terms of parole eligibility for second-degree murder, and there's more flexible sentencing for a manslaughter charge.
In court, the Crown called Veltman a terrorist, saying with the attack, the accused intended to send this message to Muslims: leave this country or you and your loved ones could be next. Prosecutors again showed the jury pictures from the crash site with a road sign flattened as Veltman drove full throttle. Veltman doesn't dispute he deliberately ran over the Afzals with his truck. It will be up to the jury to decide what charges he's guilty of based on the evidence. The judge will first have to instruct the jury on how to come to a verdict. Thomas Dagler, CBC News, Toronto.
The city says the opening of its Bright Lights Festival won't be delayed despite a fire breaking out at Jackson Park this past weekend. The blaze broke out on Sunday around 4 p.m. Windsor Fire says straw inside the park is what ignited the fire, but say the cause remains unknown. No injuries were reported. The city is holding a news conference tomorrow afternoon to share what people can expect at this year's Bright Lights Windsor 2023. That will open to the public on Friday, December 1st. OPP officers are investigating a crash that happened earlier this morning, resulting in the death of a pedestrian. Police were called to Highway 77 in Leamington around 6 a.m. north of Mercia Road 5. Police say a vehicle traveling on the road hit a pedestrian who was pronounced dead on scene. Investigators aren't sure what led to the crash and are asking anyone who may have been there in the area at the time to come forward with information. Local unionized workers say they're pleased with proposed legislation that would ban employers from using replacement staff while there's a strike or lockout. Canada's Labour Minister was in Windsor today to speak with union leaders about Bill C-58.
Those of us in the labour movement have been looking for something like this as long as we've been representing workers, and it's a great first step. You know, a rising tide lifts all ships, as they say, and this is, you know, a great first step in recognizing that the collective bargaining rights of workers. There have absolutely been hundreds of examples throughout the years of where replacement workers have hindered the rights of the collective bargaining rights of workers, and like I said, this is a great first step in stopping that.
The Liberals say they worked closely with the NDP's Labour critic to make the bill happen. It was tabled last week and was a key NDP demand in their agreement with the federal government. When asked what benefits the bill would bring, the Labour minister said he doesn't believe job action or back-to-work legislation is the answer.
I think a mature and reasonable way for unions to demand what they need to demand, and for employers to demand what they need to demand at a negotiating table shouldn't have to come with all sorts of disruption. We got enough disruption going on in the world. So I think it's just good for the economy and it's good for employers if we go about it this way.
CBC News reached out to Conservative Labour critic and Essex MP Chris Lewis, but we've yet to hear back. A CBC News investigation has found the Ontario government pays for-profit medical clinics more money to perform certain surgeries than public hospitals get. And it's raising questions about the Ford government's plans to do more surgeries outside hospitals. The CBC's Mike Crawley is on this investigation and tells us more about the findings.
Don Mills Surgical Unit is a private, for-profit clinic in Toronto. It's doing a few thousand outpatient surgeries a year, covered by OHIP, funded by Ontario taxpayers. Documents obtained by CBC News show this clinic is funded more generously than Ontario hospitals. For each cataract surgery, the province provides hospitals with a little over $500. Don Mills Surgical Unit gets more than $1,200. For an arthroscopic knee surgery, hospitals are funded roughly $1,300 to $1,700 each. The clinic's funding rate, more than $4,000 per surgery.
The costs to the Ontario taxpayers are substantially more for exactly the same service. And so there's no justification for this that I can possibly think of.
The Health Ministry says it contracted the clinic and paid a premium to tackle the backlog of surgeries triggered by the pandemic.
It's really about people having access and making sure that they're not sitting on wait lists, they're not having to wait at home, they're not off work.
Don Mills Surgical Unit is part of ClearPoint Health, the largest chain of private surgical clinics in Canada. ClearPoint's newest lobbyist in Ontario, the former Health Minister, Christine Elliott. Her official lobbying goal, registered with the province, getting the government to increase base funding to the company. During Elliott's time as minister, provincial spending on surgeries at Don Mills increased sharply. It was running at $1.3 million per year, then quadrupled.
The main rationale that the government has used to argue for greater for-profit delivery simply doesn't pass the sniff test.
ClearPoint Health declined CBC's request for an interview. In a statement, a company official said Don Mills Surgical operates within funding levels assigned by the province to reduce wait times.
If there are shareholders in this that are not part of the healthcare delivery team, that is clearly taking money out of the system.
The Ford government plans to expand the number and type of surgeries done outside hospitals, including hip and knee replacements, as early as next year. How much of that will go to for-profit clinics and how much they'd be paid remains to be seen. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
The Ford government introducing new legislation today to crack down on bad employers, updating the Employment Standards Act.
Ontario's restaurant and service industry is made up of more than 400,000 men and women, more than 6% of the province's workforce. But often, these same people, the ones who do so much to make sure we have a good time when we're out, are falling behind through no fault of their own.
If passed, the legislation will ban unpaid trial shifts. It would also stop employers from docking worker pay in instances of dine and dash or gas and dash. As well, employees will be able to choose how they receive their tips. Ontario could be moving closer to seeing beer sales in corner stores. It's something that isn't allowed right now due to a deal with the owners of the beer store. But reports suggest the provincial government may soon end that agreement. Lorena Redekop has the details.
This convenience store owner would like to be restocking his fridge with beer.
Since COVID, everything is really hard. It'll really help my business, I think.
Right now, the beer store sells most of the beer in the province. Sales are allowed in LCBOs and a maximum of 450 grocery stores. But the maximum size is a 6-pack, no cases of beer. A master framework agreement from 2015 laid out the rules between the province and the 3 big brewers that make up the beer store. It runs until the end of 2025. But if the government doesn't want to renew, it has to let the owners know 2 years in advance. If this were to happen, it wouldn't come as a surprise. Doug Ford promised it in his first term.
We are going to have beer in the corner stores and retail stores. We're negotiating hard.
Recently, the finance minister was asked for an update.
We're continuing to have very serious discussions with the key players, and when we have news on the booze, we'll be sure to tell you.
The minister's spokesperson released a statement saying the government supports meaningful change to alcohol sales in Ontario. It mentions the expansion for restaurants and bars, allowing them to sell alcohol with takeout. And it says they look forward to continuing to deliver choice for Ontarians and new opportunities for businesses.
We've had the discussions over and over and over, and I guess the time has come, and let's get moving.
The organization representing convenience stores argues small stores can sell beer in other provinces and wants the near monopoly on sales here to end.
The beer stores is a 1927 archaic retailing model, and no one can understand why they have the control of beer sales in Ontario.
The beer store has 7,000 unionized workers. The union has also heard the rumors and wants to know for sure.
We're trying to meet with the government to hear with our own ears, what is going to happen. If you know what's happened, please let me know.
He's feeling especially desperate given that they start bargaining for a new contract next Monday.
Our members are at their wits' end. The unknown for anybody is horrible, and nobody knows. We have no answers for them. We wish we did.
Given the beer store framework agreement, we should know something by the end of December. The 3 brewing companies who own the beer store did not respond to a request for comment. Lorenda Redicomp, CBC News, Toronto.
A local charity says they're seeing a large influx of people needing their services, and that's causing them to have to cut back. Windsor Goodfellows programming is donation-based. It provides food, clothing, and other necessities to those in need. But this year, the president says the need for services is up 43%. With their annual paper drive less than 2 weeks away, they're hoping for some big donations.
We're giving out hygiene products and meat products. They would get their choice of either a small chicken or 2 pounds of ground beef. Well, unfortunately, we've had to suspend those 2. They're still getting the box, they're still getting all the produce, they're still getting the milk, the eggs, the butter, all that. But we've had to suspend the beef and the chicken, and we've suspended the hygiene products. Hopefully temporarily, if we can get the funding, again, how important our drive is this year. We've made small cuts to just about every program.
So what is it in the economy that is putting people in this position then?
Obviously, it's the rising costs of everything. I mean, you pull up to the gas pump and you see it, You go into the store and a loaf of bread that maybe used to cost you $1.50, $2 is now $3, $3.50, the price of food, the price of gas, the price of housing. By the time you pay all those things, there's not a lot left over to be able to buy groceries, especially if you have a young family. And that's why it's vitally important that we stay open. We can continue to do what we've been doing for, this is our 113th year. This will be our 110th year of the paper drive, but we want to continue to be able to do this for a long, long time to come, not just for this year and next year and maybe the next 4 or 5 years. We want to make sure we're here for another 100+ years.
Being away from home during the holidays can be tough. That's what many international students are experiencing this weekend during Diwali. We went to the Hindu Temple and the Cultural Center in East Windsor to see some of the celebrations.
It's certainly difficult since this is my second Diwali away from home, and so we live very close to each other. So that's time I really miss them a lot. And apart from that, all I can do is video call them, send them pictures, receive pictures. But yeah, at this time of the year, we really miss them a lot, all of those.
You obviously miss out on a lot of things, but you have good friends over here, so we try to celebrate as much as we can over here in Canada. So yeah, we try to make up for it like that. We cook good food and go out dressed up traditional. That's how we do it.
For the international student, we also, as in a temple, we have a responsibility. As in a community center, we have a responsibility. So what we do for our international student, international student means it's not for Hindus as well, but all the Indians in general, because the Muslim, Sikh, Jain, all the people, non-Hindu as well, we consider everybody the international student.
When the students come to the uproot themselves from their own country, which is India, and come here, they always have those memories, emotions. So what we try to do also, besides doing a big picture, we're also trying to provide a platform so that they can fulfill their mental, spiritual, religious requirements, so that they're happy, they feel homely, so that when they come here they feel home.
Well, it was a beautiful, crisp day out there with a gorgeous sunset to finish it off. We have your full weather forecast coming up after the break. Well, here now with your mid-November weather forecast is Victor Paolo.
Meg, hope all is well. Taking a look at a couple of headlines for here in Windsor. Just like to note, it was a bit chilly today, but the good news is we do have above seasonal temperatures in our future. What I mean by that is seasonal temperatures around this time of year is closer to single digits, but we're looking at some double-digit temperatures over the next 48 hours. Now, that's going to be accompanied by some chilly nights. It'll be the result of chance of flurries when it comes to your Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But taking a look at some watches and warnings in the area. Now, the good news is when it comes to the majority of Windsor, there is no significant significant weather expected, except if you're by the water where there is a wind warning in place that'll last all the way through to about midnight on Thursday. But once all that's out the way, it looks like as if things will be pretty clear when it comes to the rest of your weekend, when it comes to watches and warnings. Now, taking a look at the map here, one thing we can note, there's a bit of cloud cover when it comes to what we're expecting over the next couple of hours, but that cloud cover is not bringing any rain for the next 48 hours, which is always a great sign. Now, we're expecting things to clear up by your Wednesday morning, and that clear skies are going to last all the way through until about Thursday. When on Thursday? Well, right after lunch, we're expecting the clouds to stroll back in. Not too many, not too thick, but closer to Thursday night, Friday morning, that's when things are going to be getting a little bit more cloudy. Now, that cloudy skies will be accompanied by a little bit of precipitation, as you do see here, and that's going to be also a result of when temperatures will start to drop once that rain passes by. When that rain passes by, we're expecting the temperatures overnight to be closer to single digits, and that is why you do see a chance of flurries coming by when it comes to your Friday. Now, looking at the next 48 hours, think about some good news, some nice sunny thoughts. Well, it's going to be 13 degrees on Wednesday, 15 degrees on Thursday, and look at that Thursday low of 11 degrees. Now, Thursday's the day where I want to be in Windsor 100%. If you do look at Friday, because of that -1 overnight, there is a chance of flurries once the temperature drops with the precipitation. That 8 degree with a low of 0 and that 6 degrees with a low of -1 is another reason that'll bring a potential chance of flurries. And then right back to seasonal temperatures for Monday and Tuesday. Hope you all have a great rest of your night, and over to you, Meg.
Thanks so much for that, Victor. We are looking forward to some warm and sunny temperatures. That was Victor Paolo with tonight's weather forecast. Now, coming up, what would you pay for a copy of Elvis's school report cards? It's up for auction, along with a number of other artifacts. We have that story coming up after the break. As the Israel-Hamas war continues, so does the destruction and suffering in Gaza. Refugees in the south are facing dangerous conditions as cold, wet winter weather arrives. In the north, the key focus of the hardship is the Al-Shifa hospital, and a warning, some images are disturbing. The number of dead at the hospital is overwhelming the ability to manage it. There are hundreds of bodies and mass burials are being conducted at the site. The World Health Organization calls it catastrophic. Those who have fled to the south are now crowding into tent cities, facing a cold, wet winter as temperatures drop and the rainy season moves in. There are growing fears about the spread of disease. In Israel, anguish grows for the more than 230 hostages being held by Hamas. A growing number of people are demanding the government do more to get them back. Effects of the Israel-Hamas war are spilling into Islamic and Jewish communities around the world, including here in Canada. Reports of anti-Semitic and Islamophobic bigotry have increased. A new report on Islamophobia from Canada's Senate makes several recommendations, including calling for action in the classroom. CBC's Deanna Sumanak-Johnson reports.
This university professor has worked with school boards in rural Alberta, using art projects to help fight prejudice against Muslim students.
Female students who are wearing the hijab, a very common racial slur that these students confront in their everyday lives is, why are you wearing this piece of cloth on your head?
She says the Israel-Hamas conflict has upped the intensity.
It is in times of war that you witness a hardening of identities. Everybody becomes aware of, ethnic origins, where they're coming from.
The new Senate report on Islamophobia found that it is a daily reality for many Muslims. One of the report's main recommendations: launch a multimedia campaign and educational resources on Islamophobia that can be incorporated into classrooms. Yet this school board in a Peel district outside of Toronto is the only one in the country to have produced a board-wide strategy on Islamophobia. It includes things like mandatory annual training for teachers on how to be culturally sensitive to Muslim students. But even there, it's unclear whether teachers have yet been trained on the strategy. Asia Khan helped write it, and she says it can't be implemented soon enough.
They had completed the strategy, which was the first step. But now I think community is kind of holding their breath and waiting, right? We want to see kind of the ways in which we move this into action.
The organization she works for noted a significant rise in calls from community members who say they've faced hostility, prejudice, or attacks since October 7th. Some of those calling were parents.
Caseloads have gone, it skyrocketed. In all areas, right? The work that we do in our spaces.
Khan is also working with teacher college students, the future educators, to help support Muslim students. School boards in Toronto and London, Ontario are also about to develop plans to fight Islamophobia. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
Some iconic memorabilia from the late 20th century is going up for auction next month.
This two-sided card was indeed Elvis Presley's 6th grade report card. You can see Elvis's grades, which went from pretty good to not so pretty good, but he was very, very good in music, I can assure you that.
Elvis's report card is expected to bring upwards of $15,000. It's one of 30 lots that will be up for online bidding. Premier pieces include about 3 hours of studio master recordings for Bob Dylan's first album and a pristine sealed copy of the Beatles' White Album. Other notable items include an impressionist painting by American author Henry Miller and a note about the space race handwritten by U.S. President John F. Kennedy. A new coming-of-age tradition is catching on in Japan, but we aren't talking about children. Pet owners are taking their four-legged family members to a local temple for blessings as the country faces a plummeting birth rate. Pet parents dress up their fur babies in their finest to attend the local shrine and receive a blessing from a Shinto priest. Prayers are said for health and happiness, and wishes cast for a prosperous future. This particular shrine southwest of Tokyo established a specific site for ritual ceremonies for pets in 2012. About 120 furry friends are expected to participate in this year's festivities. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also download the CBC News app for stories that matter most to you. And don't forget to watch The National tonight at 9 on CBC News Network, 10 p.m. on CBC News app, CBC TV, and streaming. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.